I've been thinking about the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment reads, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Okay, so we seem to be doing pretty good on the second clause, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, and that's been upheld as an individual right. The first clause does not mean it's only the right of, say, a group, a militia. Like the minority opinion in the Supreme Court on this said that, yeah, well, this says that, something akin to you have to be in the militia. Like you'd have to be in the well-regulated militia, and then you could have your assault rifle or armed tank or whatever. That was the minority opinion. Still, the sentence doesn't go away. It doesn't leave. This is one of the 10 amendments out of something like 14 that were proposed in the Bill of Rights. This is a real phrase here, right? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. This is at least one reason we have the right to bear arms. So where's our well-regulated militia? Now, I'm sure this probably strikes you guys. The idea of a militia has been left to rot, to the attrition of history's ravages, including the very idea of militia. But there's a very noble, progressive idea behind this. And the idea is a bias against standing armies. I think it was in the Constitutional Convention that somebody likened a standing army to an erect penis. It might make the home life exciting, but it also invites foreign adventures, And just in a more cold context, having men around with guns, trained to use guns 24/7, it becomes a temptation for tyranny, and there were people among the revolutionaries that thought this way. And so the idea of a militia is that if people, have their cell phone network, they could be roused in short order, and they're armed, and perhaps they have armories with, still more arms and armored vehicles and, National Guard kind of equipment. Well, it's very hard, perhaps impossible, to occupy such a nation. It's not very good for offensive wars, but there was a sentiment that you might not need offensive wars. But of course, with the Indian Wars and whatnot, we became embroiled in constant offensive wars from the Revolution on, and the de facto existence, the de facto reality of a standing army and navy, eventually Air Force, made the idea of a militia seem unnecessary. But I think we could probably address some of the problems, because I'm a Second Amendment liberal, I'm a country boy, but I think we could deal with some of the problems if we did try to create a well-regulated militia and integrate the creation of that militia with the right to bear arms, because it's dangerous when people like Ben Shapiro and even Alex Jones try to tell us and pretend that the Second Amendment is there so you can rise up against the tyranny of the Republic. No, that's not it. There are founding fathers that said things to that effect, but what was agreed on in the Constitution is very clear. There's a definition of treason. You're not allowed to commit treason. Now, everybody in the government has to take an oath to the Constitution. If they violate the Constitution, then they violated that oath and they're not a part of the Republic. But that's quite different. The Second Amendment is really about a militia that can take up arms to defend the Republic. So I just think that this sentence, the Second Amendment, is a balance. And I understand the ruling. I don't necessarily differ with the ruling that says that that first phrase doesn't mean people don't have an individual right to bear arms. Fine. But it does sort of mean that the government is supposed to make sure there's a well-regulated militia, and a true National Guard. They can't be deployed overseas, but can't possibly be deployed in national disasters and other things that military that martial organizations are apt at dealing with. You know, establishing supply lines to places where the regular supply lines have broken down and so forth. So, yeah, even if you think that's a crazy idea, which I sort of suspect most of you would, just because of, you know, who you probably think of militia in a framing that has people that would want to be in it. You wouldn't want them in there. But what about every gun owner? But even if you're against that idea, I think it's worth you discussing or thinking about the reward of, if it is possible to have a competent militia, that it wasn't itself a danger to the republic, that, you know, it could be there if some of these, you know, I don't know, race purist MRA military compound militia, self-described militiamen, decide to pull some shit. You know, these are the kinds of organizations that could pull together and protect the republic. But anyway, I went off on a tangent. My point was simply to, what if it was possible to do? Isn't that a big reward to not need a standing army? I think that would have been an amazing thing if the United States had managed to defend itself on a militia basis and never had needed a standing army. Obviously, we can see a bunch of subsequent history where it seems like we did need it, but things like the war in the Pacific we needed because we went over there with our Navy and tried to kick ass and so on. You know, if we had not provoked that, we might not have needed the, you know, standing armies, or could be self-fulfilling prophecies. Cheers.